Welcome, everybody. Tomorrow it will be International Women's Day, and that's the reason why we, Studium Generale, invited Christy Aikhorin to be our speaker today. Christy Aikhorin is Director of Women Engage for a Common Future. She's born in Nigeria. She lived in various countries, including the Netherlands, and in fact she studied chemical technology at the University of Twente. You told me just before that it's this month, exactly 20 years ago, that you first entered our campus. So it's a memorable day, a memorable month for you. She worked for a lot of companies, including Shell. A near-death experience made her change her life. And nowadays, sustainability, a sustainable world, is one of the main goals in her life and work. Why did she change her perspective? She will tell about her life and work, and afterwards you will have the possibility to ask questions. I would like to give the floor to Christy, and please give her a big hand.
Thank you very much, Hiska, for that beautiful introduction. And words will not be able to express how thankful and how happy and humbled I am to be here today to share my story, because exactly a year ago I decided to start working with Women Engage for a Common Future, WECF, a non-profit organization where I serve as a link between people who have lots of different thoughts and different multiple disciplinary ideas with policies in order to have sustainable impact. So I am so excited, really happy to be here, to be able to connect with Twente, really, or reconnect with Twente, where a lot of innovative ideas emerge, and in this space where we can have sort of a conversation, which I believe is a path towards diversity and inclusion. So I'm an African woman, as Hiske mentioned. I am a chemical engineer. I have a career built around project management. I've been managing engineering projects for about 15 years. And now I'm steering and sort of directing programs for WECF. As I said, an organization that is really focused to put gender equality when it comes to sustainable development, climate change, and building a toxic-free world. So how did this engineer, this woman, end up with this non-profit organization? Well, I would say I'll try and start from the beginning, and I know I have about 30 to 40 minutes, so I'm going to use some pictures to try and convey my message, because they say pictures speak much louder than words. I would also say my story is shaped by 3 R's. So I don't know if you've heard of this, but I would say rights, responsibilities, and resources. As I share my story, I'll try and convey what I mean by those 3 R's, if you've never heard it. And later on, the 4th R came into it. I think my life is like anybody else's life, I really think. And my story it has ups and downs, it has joys and sorrows. It also has days where I regret decisions or mistakes, things, and I will never call them failure. I mean, I think conventional thinking will say failure, but I think a failure is something when you don't learn anything from an experience. So, and actually, this moment of what people might say, oh, you failed, you didn't do well, you were not successful at that target that you had, I really find those moments to be creative opportunities, a period where one can then emerge with new and flourishing ideas. And that's perhaps the crisis, one of the things Hiska said I should please share about. So, like I said, I will share some images. I hope no one here has any sight impediment, but if you do, please, can a neighbor please share their sight with them? Yeah, as you can tell, I'm speaking in English, and I say sorry, but my Nederlands is niet zo goed. So ik denk het is best dat ik in Engels spreek. Lastly, as Iska said, I'll stay behind for some drinks, so please, if you have questions, thoughts, ideas that you would wish to share, ask, please join me in that conversation. I love talking. So you might have to stop me somewhere, Iska, to let to go. So come, but if not, if you can't stay for the drinks, please, you can contact me via email. I'll do my best to respond as quickly as I can. So let me try this. Am I supposed to direct it here? It's not changing. Okay.
Let me see, maybe.
Oh,
Yeah.
just the middle.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
the right one. So, my life, I like to say, starts from when I was born in Nigeria to these two lovely people that I call my mom and my dad. They're both from Nigeria. My mom is from Jos, which is the central part of Nigeria, and my dad is from Edo State, which is very much southern part of Nigeria. These two could be from completely two different countries because they have completely different languages, cultures, food, styles, completely different. But anyway, and maybe where the country wasn't colonized by the British, it might have been different countries, but I'll save that conversation for another day. The fact that I want to stress is that from a very young and tender age, I was exposed to diversity. I got to see the beauty of inclusion. I got to understand that integration is very much possible, even though people have differences. And that's why I love this picture. I'm wedged between my parents, sort of uncomfortable and I think upset. But my parents are sort of encouraging and smiling. I don't know the story behind this picture, but I just love it because it reminds me also that when about diversity, that you do have to embrace difference, and it then means that you have to get into kind of an uncomfortable situation. For some reason, I just associate this picture with that thought. And please keep that in mind because I think a lot of time when we have to talk about differences, we're thinking you need to shift from some position, and that position is one of comfort to one of uncertainty, to one of I don't understand. But give it a chance because I think it will help to give some balanced solution. And I really believe that that's how we get to more holistic solutions that will address a lot of the sustainability challenges that we face today. And like late Desmond Tutu used to say, differences are not intended to separate, but precisely to realize that we need each other. So my world goes around people. And I think one of the reasons is this woman. She is my late grandmother. Sorry, I said grandmother mistakenly. She's actually my grand aunt. She raised my father while living in Jos. And she is the reason actually my parents got to meet because my dad moved from where he was living with his own parents, actually his mom only because his father was later this time, my granddad, and moved to Jos. And that's how he met my mom. We call her Mama. She would call me, when she heard that my name was Christy, she said, "What's that? That's so English. That's not a name I recognize." So she gave me the name Efe Lomo. And Efe Lomo, short from Efe, which is what I'm called by my family members, means child is more precious than wealth. And each time I hear that name, someone calls that name, I say it, I read it, I remember that we need to put people first above any other thing. So I try to focus on people who are around me, and I believe that's more important than thinking of people who are very much farther away, not that they're not important, and also that money will not solve all the problems that we have. It will not solve half of the issues that we have when it comes to the food security matters that we have or the energy crisis. Money alone or technology even will not address pollution and waste, unemployment and migration caused by climate and biodiversity loss, and the social challenges of modern-day human trafficking, as well as the rise of burnout cases that you would hear, or even the unfair wages and unpaid care work that we have in society. So money alone, just having a lot of it, or having the technological advancement, will not come to address this kind of issues, and that's what I found out. And if, for some reason, FA reminds me of that. And I'm pointing in this picture to the laptop, a very old laptop I had when I finished my studies here in Twente, because when I got back home, Mama asked me, "Come show me all the people you've been living around all these years that you left home. So here I am trying to show her that picture, and I can't remember who captured the story. So I've established my roots, and I think I've tried to convey that I do have an interest for sustainability. I would share that a little bit more maybe later as we go. But how did I end up in the Netherlands, you're wondering? First came South Africa. When I was 16 years old, my dad, for his work, he worked at a bank. He had to relocate. We all had to relocate, as it was decided by my parents that we would relocate to South Africa. This was 2 years just after apartheid was abolished and Nelson Mandela was the president. I got to go to a school that was for only white kids. And we had completely new experiences because for the first time in my life, I got to study with students who were not like me in terms of color, at least. See, when I was in Nigeria, race did not matter. I think race matters, of course, but it just didn't come up. And at 16, I didn't know what that was. So I was surrounded by people I didn't understand. I could see there were people, but I couldn't sort of have that engagement that I used to have back home in Nigeria. And there were Africans, there were black Africans in my class, but they spoke different languages. And I knew that speaking different languages should not be a reason why you can't be included, because my parents spoke different languages, but they found a way to get along, right? But anyway, I couldn't navigate. I didn't have the tools, I realized, to navigate what it meant to be living in the rainbow nation of South Africa. And so I focused on my studies. I studied so hard that I excelled in all my subjects. By the third month, the school wanted to give me something, so they decided to give me a badge that said I'm academic because I did so well. And they couldn't make me a prefect because that position was already given to all the other students. So I did so well, the badge said it all, but politically and socially, I was really not in a good place. And I think that combined with the fact that I was a teenager, just meant I was in a very confusing place in my life. But I did matriculate, and just trying to check my notes, because I know I would go off somewhere. I think we found solace somehow anyway, because my family, I'm the third of 4 kids. My parents and my siblings are also going through this phase, but we didn't know that we're each, whenever we go out to school or to work, we're dealing with things. When we came home, we didn't talk about anything outside, we just took solace in each other. Anyway, I finished matriculation. I matriculated, that's what you call it in South Africa when you finish your high school degree, high school program, secondary school. And my parents gave me 3 choices. They said, now it's time to go to university. You did very well. But young lady, you're going to get only 3 choices. You're going to do either law, medicine, or engineering, nothing else. And I thought, not that I even thought of other things anyway. So I thought, thank you, I have 3 choices. I'll focus on them. Medicine, I'm not going to be a doctor. I don't see myself doing that. Law, never. So engineering, just by elimination, came by. And just because I loved chemistry, I thought I'll do chemical engineering. Even though I applied for pharmacy, because I thought, let me make my parents a little bit happy. I won't be a doctor, but at least I can be somewhere in the medical field. So I applied for that, and I also applied for methodology, I think that's it, study of metals. And I got all 3 positions, so I was once again faced with, which one will I do? Anyway, I chose chemical engineering since it was the first one. And I'm glad my parents chose that. Or made me to limit my choices, because it meant that I went to the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg in South Africa. And something about that university made me just wake up. I mean, I wasn't no longer this isolated child who was all about her academics in high school. I got to meet same blacks and Indians and whites as well in my school, in the university. But something I think about the space and maybe just the maturity, I got to finally start understanding a little bit more about why there was segregation in South Africa and why a lot of my black classmates were not doing very well at their studies just because of their background. And I found my own voice. I got to be able to share my own story about being Nigerian, about being African to my fellow South Africans. And so I began to see myself as a bridge, as acting as really a link, trying to understand people and bring this to others and do the same towards them. And I would say this sharpened very much in my 3rd year. Now, in my 3rd year, I I was about to say the word failed, but no, I got to repeat a course that was a prerequisite for the third year courses. So, and most of us, I think 98% of the class actually failed that, had to repeat that course that year. And it meant that you just took that one course, at least for my case, the whole year. So there I was stuck with a lot of time on my hands to redo this course. And you can imagine my parents just being so angry because with me because two things. My dad was going to return to Nigeria. His work meant that was the next stage of his own career, and he was going to leave me and my sister in South Africa. So they were like, "We're not going to be here to watch what you're doing." And as an international student in South Africa, we paid way more than the local South African citizens. So this thing just sort of made my parents very mad. But I said, no, I'm going to work very hard. Trust me, it's going to be fine. And anyway, I was very committed to make the most of that year, but also to make it count, because I knew I was lacking. Even though I was now finding my voice, understanding a little bit of South Africa, I still didn't really understand. So the third year was when I read a lot of books. I watched a lot of documentaries, and I was in the library trying to understand what apartheid did to South Africa. I joined the student club, and I volunteered at the church, where I started helping out a lot of physically and mentally disabled people, and I got to understand that disability physically does not mean that mentally you don't have a huge amount of strength. And I got my first paying job. I got to teach maths to high school kids, and I had different colored kids. I was teaching maths because I tried waitressing, you see, and that did not work. So after the first day, I thought, that's it. Maths is easier to teach, and I even got paid higher for that. I got to understand really what it meant to be in a relationship, because I got my first boyfriend in that year. And then I also, at that end of the year, I also dumped that boyfriend because I realized he wasn't interested in my own aspirations. So the point I'm trying to say is I explored very much in this third year, which people thought, including my parents, thought was a waste of time. That was the year I got to understand what it meant to be a bit South African, what it really meant a little bit, because I won't fully understand. Anyway, and that year happened to be the year that I also got to understand you can excel academically, but you can really well and still excel socially and politically on other fields, because I also did a lot of sports in this year as well. I got a medal that indicated that I scored the highest score ever in that specific subject, that course that we had to repeat. And what it meant was that I got to understand it. I proved to my parents that I didn't waste the year. But it also meant that the rumors that have been going on, that the lecturer who gave this course was racist, was silenced, because people thought, oh, many of his people who passed were only the whites, and the rest failed, so he must be racist. But he knew I was African, yet he put my name forward for this award. And so it changed a few people's minds and their understanding. I completed my university degree after 2 years, and I'm still friends with a lot of my university mates who were now going off to get jobs that were waiting for them. So you see a lot of engineering students at that time were sponsored. They had companies who paid for their tuition fees. And meanwhile, I didn't have that. My parents, as you can recall, paid for my fees. And so one of the things I noticed then was, like, you don't have resources, it limits your choices. And that's the first R that I wanted to point out, that resources and access to things means that your choices in a way get limited. But, and I was settling at that moment to just do a master's. I was fine to do a master's at that point because one of the only female professor in the chemical engineering department was like, Christy, you do a master's, that opened doors to you. So I thought, okay, I'll do my master's. And then just a couple of days later, I saw an application to do a master's in the Netherlands. And I thought, why not? I'll take the chance and apply. And so amongst all the students who applied, I was speaking to Professor Henk van den Berg and Professor Gert Vester. So those were the first time I was pronouncing all these names, and I wanted to get the names right. I'm not sure if I got it now. But we had this interview, and yes, that's what set me off to my trip to the Netherlands. I got an opportunity to do a program called TWIO. It's like 2 years of IO, which would then link to my master's in chemical engineering. So that was me 20 years ago when I arrived from Schiphol, taking the drive or the train down to Enschede, and I relived that memory because I was coming down the train, and there were less and less buildings and more trees, and I was like, what happened to civilization? I thought this was the first world country. So, but now I know that's where I fell in love with nature. That's actually where my sustainability love started really flourishing. And I learned a lot, in Twente. And I didn't realize I could actually cycle so well. So many other things like that, but I'll spare you. One of the things that I really, really enjoyed in the Netherlands was, as a student in Twente, was my international background. So I've moved from Nigeria, went to South Africa, had this South African kind of fusion going on. And here I was now with students from all over the world: Iran, Iraq, Palestine, Turkey, Jordan, Indian. I never had got that if I stayed in Nigeria, right? And if my parents didn't insist that I do engineering. So I had a ball of a time while studying in Twente, as you can tell, and that's why I'm very happy to be here. I explored so many things, and I started comparing also as well life in Africa as well in Europe, and I was seeing how Europe just, of course, the lifestyle here, the standard of living is way higher, it's better than in Nigeria or in South Africa even, unfortunately. And how will I put it, the freedom people have to express their point of view was very interesting. I thought, oh, wow, why didn't I ever have this sort of upbringing? Because as a kid, and something I also noticed was the freedom to question everything. And I think that's awesome, because as a kid, I would ask a question. My dad would say, shut up, adults are speaking here, you just be visible. I've always had a problem with that. So for me, being in Europe, in Netherlands, was like, I'm home, I can ask my questions, I can figure out how things work. And people found it maybe blunt, but I really like the fact that people can ask questions, and if you have an answer, you give it, and if you don't, you say you don't know, or it's not your business, but at least don't say shut up. So, so many of those kind of things were popping up, and I think another thing that struck me was that I'm a Christian, so on Sunday, the churches are closed. And I was really surprised about that, because I thought Christianity came from Europe, so this would be like the queen of churches being open, but it just woke me up to the fact that that's not the case. As opposed to in Africa, where on Sunday, the religiosity is so much that you might not even find space in the church. So that whole thing was once again an exploratory phase for me. And you might question, what does that have to do with diversity? But a lot, because this is my own lived experience and trying to navigate what the world around me is about. Well, during my second year at Twente, I got to do an internship with Shell. That's when Shell came in. And I think it was about this time that I organized an excursion to one of the sites at Shell. And Shell was wonderful. During my time there, I got to actually develop a design and patent that design for recovering liquefied natural gas system. And because LNG, short form for liquefied natural gas, was considered cleaner for the environment. And perhaps it is. But I felt very, very lost in Shell. You see, it's very big, it's so massive, and I just really, once again, a little bit of that feeling of you're in a space with people, but you don't know where you belong and what kind of contribution you're making. And like I told Hiska earlier on, I love small, and being in Shell for some reason just didn't feel like home for me. So there I was, I finished my 2IO program, my master's program, and I was ready to go back to Nigeria. And this just upset my dad a lot, because normal way of thinking is that when you finish studying abroad, it's better for you to stay abroad as an average Nigerian. That's the thought. But none of what I've experienced, even though with his wisdom and everything, he hasn't lived my own experience. So I thought, in my heart, it was the best thing to do. It's the best way to use my skills and the talents that I have. I'll go back to Nigeria. There's a lot of oil and gas there. I'll make use of all the skills back in Nigeria. So there I am, went back to Nigeria, and just to figure out who I am, I put some arrows in the chat. Now, the thing is, when you finish university in Nigeria, what you are expected to do is to serve the country by doing a national youth service program. So, and I love this program so much because actually, once again, it brought Nigerians from all parts of the world together. And I don't know, I think we were making a walk. I can't think it's a protest because I don't think I've did a protest in Nigeria. But I loved my time serving because it was for 1 year. And one of the things I really, really loved was going to primary schools to actually educate them about the Millennium Development Goals. So back then, you didn't have the SDGs. Those came back out in 2015. And I really enjoyed just knowing what they were, and I was like, how come we were not taught about this in school? This is everything we need to know. Of course, I didn't have anybody to ask us questions because the average Nigerian will tell you, shut up, we'd have no time for that. But I really loved doing this. And I think that's already where my joy and love for the nonprofits sort of was coming in. But, I was back in Nigeria, not to prove that I could be a mere teacher, because at this point in time, my father was wondering why his daughter, who is a master's student, studied abroad, is teaching in a primary school and not working for a multinational. Because at this moment, I got a job when I finished my youth service, working for a local local engineering firm in Nigeria. Small, local was what I wanted. I knew it deep in my heart. And I got this opportunity to work here, and then I saw my salary, and I said, no, I'm worth more than this, resources. I need the money to be able to survive. And I forgot something. My rights. It's my right to ask. So I found my voice. I'm going to use it. So I don't know why. I complained to my dad, and he said, well, just wait. Maybe you can then get some experience, and after 1 year, you go get a job with a multinational. And I said, nope, thank you. So I went to the HR, the human resource manager, and I explained to him that, no, this is beyond what a graduate can live off from. And meanwhile, I'm a master's. I know my worth, and I know what I've contributed to the company and what I can do going forward. And he agreed. But he said, your 30% salary increase request is above what he can approve. So I needed to speak to the CEO. So I said, fine, can I have an appointment? And he said, no, you have to wait for him. When he's available, then you can speak to this CEO. So I spent the next day trying to meet the CEO of the company. It's not so big, really, but for some reason, he was very busy. So until 6 p.m. that day, I think I was waiting for like 4 hours to speak to him. He finally had time, and I explained to him, and he, I don't know, miraculously, he accepted. So I got my 30% salary increase, went to my dad and told him, good price, good working conditions I've got here, and he was shocked. But I started to see a bit of a shift in my father because he started realizing that, okay, he's getting uncomfortable, but he started embracing difference. He started embracing my own opinions. At least I saw it very much so during this time, at this point in time. And the point of why I put this picture is because in this, these are pictures of some of my colleagues. There were only two females, if you can tell, me and another lady, Funke. And I didn't think about it then, to be honest, that this representation was so low, because when we were students, there were way more female students in my engineering class. But as soon as I started working, that number just sort of dropped a lot. But like I said, I didn't pay attention to it, but I will later. So I was settling very nicely in Nigeria. I was working for this nice local engineering firm, and I was embracing what it meant to be a Lagosian. A Lagosian is someone who lives in Lagos, and I was thriving in the traffic every day going to work until when Chipla, the young guy who is in this picture, emerged. Actually, he sent me an email saying, can I come visit you in Nigeria? And because we met actually on the corridors of the chemical technology building here in Enschede. Chipla, or Dr. Chipla, I should correctly call him, because he holds a PhD degree as well as an MBA. We met in Twente, and we became friends, very good friends, because he's also Nigerian. And we just, for 3, 4, 5 years, we were friends. And I thought, well, sure, come along, come visit, come understand what it is like to be a Nigerian who came back to Nigeria to study and to work. So he came visiting, and I didn't know, honestly, that after 3 weeks, his visit will turn out to be a proposal, but I did say yes, and one thing led to the other, and now we're married, and we have 2 kids here living in the Netherlands. Now, our marriage meant that we were going to be a bridge between, like I told you, my parents come from two different parts of the world, of the country, Nigeria, and his parents come from Adamawa, somewhere up there in the north, where you have a lot of Boko Haram story going on. And it meant that now in a typical Nigerian setting, weddings are big. It wasn't what we wanted, trust me, but it was certainly what our parents wanted, the big fat Nigerian wedding. And if you if you don't understand it, but you want to appreciate it, please watch The Wedding Party. It's on YouTube. It's been made by Hollywood, which is the second biggest film industry in the world. Yes, and it's based in Nigeria. So they've made a nice movie. You can watch it. Maybe you can come to understand what I'm trying to say. But it meant that Chibla and I became a bridge between these different cultures and families, because marriages is about families, very much so in Nigeria. And so we had to shuffle a lot and organize and agree on how the different traditions and the cultures and the clothes will all fit. And we tried to bring a little bit of Dutch and Netherlands to our wedding. So we brought actually friends of ours, a Dutch guy who is married to a Colombian, to our wedding. And it was nice. It was really fun, but you have to ask him. Marriage also meant that I had to relocate from Nigeria and come to the Netherlands, because I decided I'll do that, but not until I got a job. So for about 3 to, I can't remember, some months, I was in search of a job while still working for my small local engineering firm. And I was fortunate, really, to get a job with an international engineering company in Zoetermeer. And I recall when I was walking down this bridge, it's called Nelson Mandela Brug in Zoetermeer. I just felt, I'm home. I'm working on the bridge of Nelson Mandela. This must be, a very good connection. So I got a job as a process engineer with this company, and I'm just checking my notes because I'm sure I've missed something. I got to meet Charles. Now, I picked this picture because Charles could represent many of my colleagues. Charles happened to be my mentor when I joined this company. And Charles was so convinced that I was royalty, because he said all the Africans he has seen on TV or read about, they are either sick, they are malnourished, they live in abject poverty, and they are in desperate need of charity. I must be royalty. There's no other way I could end up here. I could have an education. And I was shocked that in the 21st century, at this time, someone with such level of education would think so poorly of an average African. And privilege was something I never, ever associated with myself, but in his eyes, I was privileged. And I thought, maybe I'm privileged, but I shall use it very well. So I thought, I initially was a little bit annoyed and irritated by Charles, because he would make so many remarks and comments. But I thought he just didn't know how to accept me as a human. As he accepted me as a colleague, we worked all right, and I learned a lot with Charles, or through Charles. But he didn't see how to relate to me as a normal human being. So I thought I would invite him to my home. He will meet my family. He would see that I live in a normal house, that we ate food on the table like any other person. And we just communicated and did things like any human. And we have remained friends with Charles over the years, that my daughter actually got to, in one of these visits, when we visit each other's home, Charles played the violin, and my daughter, who is sitting with Charles in this picture, got to hear Charles play the violin, and today she actually is one of the few Africans who plays the violin in her orchestra. The point I'm trying to make, and why I wanted to share this story, is that a lot of times I believe that as the other, sometimes we have to educate each other. We are not exotic or foreign or superior and inferior. We're just humans. And we need to find a way to make the other person see us, see each other as just that, human beings. And that's it. And so Charles represents that, and that's why I decided to share his story. Anyway, I worked with this company for like 4 years, and I decided that I really love project management. It's where I really flourish. It's where I see a broader picture of engineering work, working with the finance, with procurement, with engineers. It's something I just wanted to do. So I said I would seek for a position in the project management department, and that was met with pushback, because the project management the manager felt that I would struggle. I'm a woman, I'm a mother, the job was just going to be too demanding for me. And I had never heard that before. So I thought, why would my motherhood be a problem? Why are you going to treat me unfairly because I'm a mother, simply because I'm a mother? And he told me, look around, there's no other woman in my department. And I thought, oh, good. Here is a precise opportunity for you to add a female to your department. And I challenged his point of view and negotiated because, remember, I've got a voice, it's my rights, I've got the resources, and I actually want more resources here, come on. And I want representation. I didn't use those words, and I didn't understand it then, but now I do. And he accepted, it paid off. So here I am, another 4 years after of that, when I made this request. I, together with another lady, were the only 2 females in the whole project management department. This was some course that we were doing. And I must say, at this point in time, I thought, okay, now, because even though I was in the project management department, I have worked there for 4 years, I was still called, and it's not a bad thing, but I was called a project engineer. And I said, no, I should be called a project manager. So I thought maybe if I did a course, I got a certification, then maybe it will become the tool or the means or the mechanism to become the project manager. Because you see, when you become a project manager, you get a car, you get a laptop, you get a cell phone. I thought I also want those kind of things. Anyway, so I did those things. I got a project management professional certificate with PMI, very well good project management institute, if you're ever interested in that. And I got the badge and everything, but nope, Christy, you will not, it wasn't granted to me. And anyway, not until I had to struggle really hard, because at this point in time in my career, I thought it was all about this hard work. I had to show that, I was deserving and whatever. And I put myself through a lot of stress, now I realize, because I got a ruptured appendix, and that was a near-death experience. And in this picture, I'm actually not a very nice one, and don't worry, this might be the only bad one you might see in this couple of pictures. I'm here lying down, and that's not the issue. The issue is the person who is standing next to me. That's my son. And a couple of weeks when I was looking at this picture, I thought, oh my gosh, I just sort of put myself through a lot of stress to get this ridiculous project management certificate. But also, it was a stressful project that I was working on, and my husband traveled a lot for his work during this time. So he was away from home for a couple of weeks. So I was like a single mom to 2 kids at this point in time, and holding down a full job and trying to do that ridiculous certification. I don't know why, but I put myself through it, and somehow I ended up there. And I thought, never again. I forgot to live, to actually have a fulfilling and flourishing life, because I was trying to prove that I was equal, and I should be considered equal to all my male mates. So anyway, like I said, the only bad picture would see, because I then got a wonderful 3 months recovery period. They are the best 3 months I've ever had, because I had, for the first time in my adult life as a mother, I didn't have work to wake up to. Actually, I woke up wondering, what do I do with my time? And then I recalled, oh, what did I do in 3rd year in university when I had to redo this course? So I took a course called Living Without Oil, because my husband had mentioned that renewable energy is going to be the future. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be part of this future. Let me try to understand. So I did a course called Living Without Oil with Open University. It was online. And because I was like, honestly, the world can exist without oil. Is that possible? And yes, it is possible. That's what this course proved, that it is possible for us to not rely solely on oil, on gas, and coal. And I came to realize so much about the industry I was working on, that I was struck by the fact that the oil and gas industry was the most polluting, emitting so much carbon CO2 into the atmosphere, creating all those greenhouse emissions, and significantly responsible for climate change. I was faced with a responsibility that I had to do something. I also read the encyclical by Pope Francis called Care for Our Common Home, Laudato Si, and talking about the need to care for our home, the planet, the environmental and ecological damage that we're doing to it. And I just was like, it made so much sense. And I was like, why is this not just common knowledge, out there? It had to be like secretly hidden or something. But anyway, discovered it, and I could not sort of sit there and do nothing with that realization or that discovery. I also recognized that, or found out that the second most polluting industry was, don't know if you know, the fashion industry. And I thought, well, if I can't do anything about the engineering about the oil and gas situation immediately, I can immediately start doing something about my clothing style. So you might not know, but the skirt I'm wearing, for instance, actually for my wedding outfits that I had, the attire, I started doing a lot of recycling and reusing things that I had. Because remember the picture I showed you about my wedding? There was a lot of attire being used. That is typically what happens in most Nigerian weddings. And I just felt a lot of waste being done. So one of the things I created at this point in time was it's a space which I call Unique Blends. It's on Instagram. If you want to check it and be interested, please go there. Time will not allow me to do it. But I try to educate people about the damage and the problems associated with fast fashion and just care for your clothes. And then food later came in. And WECF will now come in, as you will see shortly. So my recovery period really left me with a sense of a lot of discovery. I got to realize that I have a limited time on this earth to live effectively and have a fulfilling life, and one that is happy. And though it was very painful, I got to start reframing my story, and I got to reconnect with my roots. I started remembering Mama when she would call me Efe Lomo, where you have to put people first. And I realized that I have been putting other things, but not my kids, my husband, my family, my friends, but other things that I thought made me more whole, but I was just losing the plot. So I did return to work after this period, but I was very much determined to put my passion first, my priorities, set them high and clear, and I took my personal conviction that sustainability is the only way that we can go going forward. And I also took real intentional time to say I would carve out time for my own personal development, because that was not coming from my company. It wasn't their responsibility. I felt that's mine, so I'm going to find a way to take care of that. As I said, spending time in nature is something I found out in Twente. I started carving out time to make walks in the nature. I did that when I came here earlier on this afternoon. And different things like that. And time won't let me spend time, but it's important for you to find your own passion, to set your own priorities clear, and take care of your own personal development. It's critical. That's what I got convinced about, and I would like to convey that. And I went back to, as I said, to my department, or to my company, after 3 months, and I said, take me out of project management department. Thank you very much. I shall not be doing that anymore. And my project manager at that time was like, so what are you going to do? I said, I'm not sure. But a couple of weeks later on, I negotiated a position with what they call the new technology department, and Yanda Yaha was the manager of that department at that time. And he said, Christy, come along, join the department, and we're working on green technologies, and one of them is taking biomass to make bio-oil, and I thought, okay, that's something good to do. Let's do it. And I really, for 2 years we're doing this, I really enjoyed my time here, and even made an application where we won this award of building change or driving change in the company. Until one day I looked around and I was like, I'm the only woman, I'm the only African, what's happening? And I know in the company I'm not the only woman and I'm not the only African, but where are they? So anyway, at this point in time, after 12 years of working with this company, I decided I was going to leave. I thought maybe if I changed my company, something might change, because I thought, even though I had been on the gender equality committee, I didn't do nothing. I felt it didn't change the system. It didn't change that there were more women trickling to the top. So there I am with Koos Ovavata. He was my very first manager when I joined the company, and he's my last manager. He's now retired. We have remained friends. Tomorrow, when we have International Women's Day celebration at my organization, Koos Ovavata is going to be there. The point I'm trying to make is that you can say your goodbyes and explain also, and create diversity, opportunity, and inclusion. Not necessarily always in an institution or in a company, but you can do it in other channels. And that's what I'm hoping with working with Koos and so many of my colleagues, ex-colleagues, I can try and still keep remaining this channel of or a bridge to keep explaining different positions to create different perspectives. As I said, I went to a different company, but after 2 years also in this company, I looked around. I was the only woman. I was the only African, because here's a picture of me attending a retirement party for Sibe Bosma. We worked together on a certain project, also some green technology-related project. And he invited me. I didn't realize then, but now I do, that it was all with the management and some project manager colleagues of his. And I was the only woman in the sitting. And I don't know, I was going back home that day and I thought, this is crazy. How did I get myself again into this situation? Representation matters. And it was at this point, COVID was happening. And I think the whole lockdown and the whole working from home and homeschooling with my 2 kids, I was like, is this what I want to do? Is this what I'm going to do with my limited time that I have on earth? It's not flourishing. It's not creating the energy and the excitement that I really wanted to do. It's not contributing to sustainability in the way that I thought it should. Yes, we're working on great projects and great programs, but not in the people that surrounded me. I didn't feel that message coming across, that change is happening, that we're building this momentum and including other voices. So when you have a lockdown, what do? I did what I did when I had my 3 months recovery period, because it also made us change our routines. We had to spend more time at home with the kids or go out for walks, and those walks made me think I just wanted to spend some time reflecting on my career and what I'm doing with my work life. And so at this time, I once again read books and did a course. And the course this time around was linked to thinking well. It's called Time to Think. And the book is called something about the promises that change. I'll share it with you later, but it's Time to Think. Really, that's the name of the course. And because I was exploring how I can sharpen my the project management skills in shepherding, I came to realize that my key strength as a project manager in directing projects was actually a shepherding style. So I wanted to take this communication course, read this book, and something led to the other. And there, one of the points that this course was talking about was that you need to ask yourself incisive questions, how that is very important for listening to others and hearing what they have to say when you put this incisive question out there to them, what it does to their mind and their quality of thinking. And one of the things it offers is that the more time you give yourself to think, the better the quality of your thinking and the better possibility you have for making better choices. And those choices will enable us to live in a sustainable world. That's the link. So I thought, okay, instead of asking these questions to other people, I'll pose the question to myself. And I said, what if I adjusted my mode of working to allow me work in a slower way, because I realized that's very important for me, and I focused on what I love. Because prior to this, I was thinking, I'm just going to run away from engineering, I'm going to leave all these male people, go somewhere else, but what am I going to do? So I thought, no, how do I evolve this and how do I change it? And that question, for some reason, really gave way to a different mindset for me. And really, the response to that question was this warm embrace that I got through this lady called Irene Dankerman. She was a board member. She was, because she's now late. She's now dead. She died, unfortunately, 28th of December last year. And she's the founding member of Women Engaged for a Common Future. We had interviews because I saw this research on this vacancy on LinkedIn. I applied. Long story short, Irene really welcomed me to join the organization as a director for Women Engaged for a Common Future, because my vision of working in an organization that is very much focused on female leadership, but also on creating a world that is more just, that is more inclusive, and that is targeted at sustainable changes, was something that WECF saw that does. They do that, and I wanted to engage with that. And Irene Dankermel was responsible for my recruitment. So she hired me to join the organization. And the transformation that we're trying to bring is about this feminists. I'm just going to check my time. Do we?
Yes, 5 minutes.
Okay, good. Yes. So what we're trying to do is a group of, you can tell most of us are women, but there are a couple of men there. These are my colleagues who we work with all over the world, not all over the world. We have 4 offices in the Netherlands. It's the headquarters where I'm the director. And then you have an office in France, in Germany, and then in Georgia. And we met last year in September for an annual strategy day. We are focused on feminist solutions. And I just got a cue that we only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to try and dash through this. But if you really want to know more about WECF, I've brought some publications to explain to you what we do. And please, we have our website details. You can please check us out. But we do try to remind the world that for us to have a sustainable world, for us to have a world that is toxic-free, and for us to address all the issues linked to climate change, we do need to have feminist action taken. And what do we mean by that? Let me see. We take this approach where you link gender equality to climate matters. It's what we call ecofeminism. And it's looking at this intersectionality where people, what the lived experiences of people matters. You don't just go and say you have a technical solution, it's all about the technology. You say, okay, what about the people who are there? What are the experiences they've lived? Or they will leave because you come to establish something new. What has been the systems they've been using in this place? So it goes, it's cross-cutting, and it's trying to take the identity of a person, which goes beyond just gender, male, female. It's looking at your religion, it's looking at your sex, looking at your educational background. So it is really complex, and that's where the 4th R came in. So I talked about rights. Having the rights, human rights is something that is fundamentally required for every single human being. Doesn't matter what shape, form, color you are, it's just a right. You have your dignified needs as a human being. So that's the first R. The second R was the resources. You do need resources to be able to indeed function as a human being, at least meet your basic rights. You need the resources and access to it. Then you have the representation, and representation doesn't mean just having numbers. It means the roles. What are those people, the different people involved in a program, in a project, in a solution? What are they doing? Or are they just having a female standing there presenting the product? Or are the female voices included in the solutions? That's representation coming in. And the 4th R is the check, the reality check. Are you checking that all these theoretical things that you're doing really is being implemented? And that's where WECF comes in. We do a lot of feminist analysis to check that policies that have been written out at international level by the UN or at the EU level by the different governments and by different local governments in different countries all over the world are actually sticking to what they said. Because even though you saw the 50 of us who work in Europe, we work with different partners all over the world, about 70 countries actually in total. And we try to go to different conferences like the COP for climate, but there's also COP for biodiversity, there's also COP coming up for chemicals, which I think is very, very important. Not many of us know what's going on toxic-free. Why are we doing this? Because we want to break the barriers, the structural barriers that are in place. There are so many of them, and I don't have much time, but you can read, because we want system change. We need the system to change. Or maybe I should check with people. Does anybody think we do need to change the system that we are operating in? Okay, some hands, some saying, okay. We believe we need to change the system. The system has to change, otherwise we're not going to get anywhere when it comes to sustainability. And that's what we mean by building a gender-just world where solutions are then going to be sustainable. Technology alone and having the money alone will not drive that. And a white savior will not also drive that. It's when all of us are able to contribute our different voices. And I know it's complex, it's not easy, but it's how you can then embrace difference. Like I said, it's that uncomfortable dance you have to do. Please stay in touch if you are interested at all in what we do. Those are our links. I would leave the contacts. I think I can share, not the pictures, but the presentation with the links. And yeah, thank you. That's it. And maybe we have questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was a real overdrive in the last minutes, because...
Sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's okay, because it was a very inspiring, but you gave a very swift overview of your life. And what struck me was that you changed a lot in your life. Yeah. You changed from country to country, from job to another job, from certain thoughts about our world to other thoughts about our world. But one thing just struck me. You said, I love small. And you ended your presentation with this organization, Women Engage for a Common Future, with such big ideas about ecofeminism and all the barriers we want to take away, the changing of the system. And that doesn't sound like small to me. It sounds very, very big.
Absolutely.
And if I hear something like that, I think, where shall I start? So my question to you is, you love small, where do you start?
Yeah.
With all those big words and ideas and
Yes.
changing of systems.
Yeah. You start with yourself, really, honestly, because, and I think I was speaking about this, we have an ambitious goal. It is ambitious, no doubt about it. But if you do not have a high ideal or a high target, there's no point to have objectives. So we've set a bar that's quite high because what we're trying to do is indeed big. But I say I love small because I work with a team of 10 of us in the Netherlands. That's my team here. And we work with each other on the small programs and projects, but we connect to the global issues because of the partners that are located all over the world. So you start with yourself, start with the people around you, do the bit you can do, because you can't be everywhere and would WECF change the world? I wish so, but no, we will not change the world. But can we contribute to changing the world? And that's the key word for me, at least personally, is that can I contribute from where I am? And can I be who I am while making this contribution? And the answer a lot of times so far, at least for 1 year I've been with WECF, has been yes. I mean, I wouldn't get the chance to do this, me being here with you guys, if I was with my previous companies, because they had a different target.
Okay.
So it's your alignment and your vision.
Yes.
So start with yourself, please. What are your visions? What are your values? What are your passions? And then start looking for those voices that relate and connect with those passions and interests. And if it's not bouncing back and giving you energy in any way and enthusiasm, and it's not aligned to what you think and you can't be who you need to be, then you might want to think about it and change. You can try and influence if you can.
And another thing which struck me was that in the beginning of your talk, you mentioned a few times your father, who was very critical. If you asked a question, it was, don't ask questions, or why are you moving from the Netherlands to Nigeria? And did you find your own voice?
Yeah. I did. And it's still evolving.
Yes, but how does your father think about your voice right now?
Oh, it's so refreshing that you asked that question, because my dad was here in the Netherlands in November.
Okay.
And he has issues with his eyes. So anyway, short story. And he left off saying something about, maybe women need to be leaders to change the world.
Oh,
yes.
Really?
And
okay.
he started using words I didn't even know. He said, I've always been a gender equality advocate. And I was like, Daddy?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know whether he's been reading our articles, but yes, I think my mom, one thing I couldn't share with you was my dad, at a young age, called me an idealist, and my mom called me stubborn.
Yes.
But my mother was also the one who reminded my dad often that she's human. So a lot of times when I ask certain things, my mom would say, oh, she's being stubborn. She would tell that to me, but she would go and tell my dad that, but she's only being human, just give her a chance, So I found my voice, and I think that's where I said when I decided to come back to Nigeria and I challenged the CEO, he was just flabbergasted because he just thought, that's never done here. You don't do that. You don't talk to a male CEO and tell him that what he has chosen to do was wrong. You don't do that. And that's an African setting because there's a whole lot of patriarchy. It's so much driven in our society in Nigeria and perhaps most of Africa. But then I married a Nigerian as well, who actually I forgot to mention, he insisted I don't change my name. So I still bear my father's last name, which my dad is very happy about.
Okay, okay, okay.
So I could go on. but I found my voice.
Just to remind us, your Nigerian name
Ife
was
Lomo.
Ife Lomo.
Yes. Good.
People first.
You could say that. Love that. Mama will love that.
Okay.
It
okay.
means child is more precious than wealth.
Ah, okay, okay. A few minutes for questions from you. Do you have a question? Just raise your hand and I will come with the mic to you so everybody can hear it.
First of all, thank you very much. I found it very inspiring. And what struck me is that you are so positive and so powerful. And the subjects, the subjects that you're dealing with, well, they are in the news a lot. But sometimes I find it so demotivating how people are so negative about those subjects. Or are you hear developments in countries where women's rights are going down instead of up? How do you stay positive and motivated when hearing those developments?
Thank you for that question. I didn't get your name. But I try to stay positive by ignoring the noise out there, to be honest. That's my own slowing down, and I read a lot when I can to form my own opinions about things. That's one thing I do, and that gives me a lot of comfort, or I would say, or motivation, because then I'm like, wow, I read a lot of things that are, to me, inspiring. Like just having a conversation with the person who is next door to you leaves you with refreshing thoughts. So I can't immediately reach out to that person who is, struggling in Turkey or in Afghanistan. I can't, and I can give some money, but okay. But I can do something to my neighbor who's next to me, and that's why I feel you get personal, but you focus on the people first who are around you. That's my own approach to life. And if that connection and interaction I have with those around me can build further on, great. But can the people around me feel my energy, my positivity, and can they give me that energy? And once I start losing that energy from those around me, there are people I cannot change. I cannot immediately change my family. I could choose to divorce, maybe, but I can't immediately change that. But I mean, in terms of work, in terms of friends, in terms of networks, if they're not giving me that energy that I also need, even though I'm giving it to them, then I'm like, okay, where can I find it? And maybe I've just been fortunate. I found spaces, and I love the space that you have here to have this kind of conversation. This gives me energy, because yesterday night, I was already a bit exhausted. But coming here, taking the drive down, or the train coming over, gives me energy. So, and having you guys here to listen to me, this is what gives energy. This is what's going to change, not the big things immediately. Yeah, that's what I feel.
Yes, thank you for this really, really inspiring talk. I'm Rosalie, and I just started here in January as a teacher at the university. Okay. And I was wondering, it seemed that your university was a place of inspiration and growth for you, but I was wondering, how can we enhance the experience of the international students here and also empower them to become change makers? Are there ideas that you have for the university or for teaching?
So we have this thing that we don't empower anybody. People take the power. So I think that's one thing that maybe we should think about. You don't give power to anyone. You get it if they have it. You feel it if you also want to have it. You can strengthen people's positions, and maybe thinking along the 3-4 R's that I've mentioned. Have this conversation with the students, check in with them, how are you doing? Because I thrived in the international space while being in Twente. As I said, students came from all over the world, and I was leaving, and that's one of the reasons I would blame it for me not being able to speak good Dutch, because we spoke a lot of English for international students, and I didn't personally feel I was lacking in anything. So maybe it's good to find out from the students themselves, how are you feeling? What are you thinking of? Maybe it's good what's going on. I don't know. But my time here, was awesome. And that's why I'm glad to be back. Checking with them. And certainly, please, check in with our programs. We have a lot of training materials. If you're interested in it, maybe WECF can be a form of collaboration of some kind to give you tools. We're working on a couple of policies at the moment, the feminist foreign policy, for instance, which is linked to trade and development. And so maybe you're interested in that, because sometimes maybe having your students engage in these kind of spaces might also link to conversations, those incisive questions that we might need to ask ourselves. And be honest also when we share the answers. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Then I want to round off.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Let's
I
be
didn't see
inclusive.
you.
Let's be inclusive.
Let's be inclusive. Yes. Sorry. Here you are.
No problem. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
First, a very short question. So you mentioned the countries where you have the offices, and one of them is Georgia.
Yeah.
And that's kind of very interesting. Why Georgia?
Because when we started, actually, Women Engage for a Common Future used to be Women of Europe Engage, Women of Europe for Common Future. So it was actually only in Europe. And the focus then was sustainable development for the Eastern European bloc. And because that's where more of the need was. And sort of that changed in 2016, where there was more global outreach because, anyway, there was more need globally. So Georgia, we saw more and more need, and there was a need to have a representative office physically there. Like I said, we're only 10 in the Netherlands. In Germany, it's a much bigger team. But Georgia had a need to be physically present, attend events with the government, with the policymakers. So we thought it was time enough to have that office.
Okay,
yeah,
that's clear. And another question, can you share some of the examples of the projects that you did?
Yeah.
Like the most striking ones?
Yeah, so I love that question because I just came back from Uganda and Kenya, my first time being in East Africa. And because we kicked off a project which is linked to food security in 6 countries in Africa. And this was bringing partners, about 14 partners, 7 of them from Europe, Germany, Greece, Italy, to Kenya for this kickoff project. So the project, as I said, we just kicked off, but it's about food security in Africa, where Africans can be able to develop their own food in a sustainable way. So I don't know about, if you know, aquaponics, for instance, where you can use less water, less land to be able to produce food. And what WECF is going to do there is to remind the whole team, the 14 different partners, to be inclusive in terms of the partners that we're working with. So we don't only want young male guys to be there. We want young people, women. We also want elderly, like grandmothers or disabled people with disabilities. So those are kind of programs. That's one. And then we also have Arue in Uganda, who went to go and visit a partner, who helps to deal with teach people how to actually farm in a sustainable way. Keep it short. And we help them to be able to have the resources to be able to do this. And when we say we bring in voices to the international space, Arue helps us to do, they do their work with the local community, training people on this agroforestry methodologies, but then they are now taking the data that they've collected from Uganda, and then working with us, we can then go to COP, for instance, and say, well, when you come with this wonderful climate technology, that is great perhaps in Europe, but sorry, it doesn't immediately mean food for the people here. When you plant a tree, you're not planting food for people, and it doesn't immediately transfer, give them a sense of any livelihood. So, cut the story short, those are kind of things. We're making the connection between what's happening with that partner, what they are observing with their own local communities, and saying how can we translate that into policies and evidence to decision makers. We have other things like solar panels. I wish you could come tomorrow. We're having showcasing our partners in Utrecht. In Utrecht, where we're showcasing some of the projects we've done. So you see a woman installing solar panels on her roof to be able to, instead of waiting for oil and gas to produce electricity, we help them source for funds, and then they can install the solar panels. Or there are many, but I don't know if that gives an idea. of some of the things we do.
You mentioned a few times that during your jobs and during school, you were the only female person and the only African person. Now you have a lot of female colleagues.
Yes, but I'm a little African, so I want to change that.
Okay. And you have some male colleagues, but you also have a colleague who is a dog, because I saw on the website of your
Germany.
company. Yes, in Germany.
Yes.
Rudy, a feel-good manager.
I don't know. I think that was to get your attention.
I thought maybe because of the walks you enjoy to make in nature and to think about life.
I wish I could take that credit. No, I think it's a colleague who is trying to like say, I don't have any nice pictures, so here's my nice looking dog. Perhaps that's the explanation.
Well, you certainly gave us a feel-good attitude by your talk, your inspiring talk. We have some drinks provided by my colleagues here in the foyer, and there you can talk with Christy if you want to about other issues. So a big applause for Christy Aikhorin.
Thank you. Yeah.